There are times when a company, organization, or certain group of people believe they either can or already have control over a certain aspect or type of gaming. Fortunately, time and the rest of us prove that impossible. Gaming and the experiences it provides belong to all that choose to partake, regardless of immutable characteristics, creed, mental state, values, wealth, or geography. Here to further prove that, I'm Not Much 23.
And I'm ChoasAssassin.
And this is Gamer Experience.
I love the new intro.
Thank you.
It's very informative and I like it. Joining us today is two guests that we've had previously. Go ahead and introduce yourselves.
I guess I'll go first. My name is Leroy, otherwise known as Lord Greyhawk. Been running and playing games for almost 50 years now, and I even managed to publish my first gaming supplement a couple weeks ago. So,
Congrats on that.
Hi everyone, my name is Preston. Gamer all around, video, tabletop, the works.
And this week's episode, which we've talked about quite a bit on previous episodes, but never have an episode dedicated to it, is running tabletop role-playing games. Because, of course, the integral part of the tabletop gaming experience is the person running it.
Started off, I'd say, since all of us are experienced in running games, what does y'all's prep look like? Like when you're getting ready to set up and run a game, what's your prep for that evening's scenario?
Oh gosh.
I would say Preston probably preps a lot more than I do. Just a sad statement to admission on my part.
You'd be surprised.
I'm pretty sure most of y'all prep a lot more than I do. Most of the time I just wing it as of late because I haven't done any society games in almost 2 years. I haven't run anything society-wise. So the game I've been doing, it's more of, okay, I want them to get, to this section. Let's see what the party ends up doing. Because they so far have done things in ways that just, I don't plan for it. I wing it.
I kind of think prep has changed over the years. I definitely do a lot more prep today than I did back in the early 80s and 90s. More often than not, prep was making sure I had all the books, some extra character sheets, and my dice loaded into a backpack to take to a friend's house, and then run off the top of my head in my own homebrew campaign at whatever system we were playing. And we hated the idea of running modules at the time because, unfortunately, modules in first and second edition AD&D, lots of combat and very little fluff. So we got bored. We made our own stuff. But today, with things like the Pathfinder Society, organized play, going to conventions and doing things, I spend months sometimes prepping for games. In the case of my current weekly Starfinder Society second edition playtest that I'm running on Wednesdays, which not much is a part of, I usually have a couple days of prep to make sure I've got everything together. I read over the chapter that they'll mostly be going through, and also try to get there early enough to make sure that the players are ready as well, because sometimes that's the most important part of prep, is making sure that everything is ready to go for the players, because I think all of us have seen that last minute player come in and I want to play the game, but I don't have a character.
Oh, let's throw one together.
Yeah, and some games that works great. Some games you can't do that. For instance, if you're playing hero system, making a character takes hours because you're literally making everything, including every little ability you've got. You can't do a 15-minute character in that system. But Pathfinder, Starfinder, 5e, and several other modern games, you can do the 15-minute character. It's not going to be perfect, but you can do it. And scenarios and things have gotten so much more interesting because the fluff is better written, that I now do a lot more organized play and a lot more pre-made stuff than I do freelance, and it's just more fun to have something sometimes. But that's kind of the way it's become for me.
I do miss Society because when running the Society games versus my homebrew, there was a lot more character development in certain things in Society, whereas now it's just I have to come up with that all on my own, and I miss that from Society. I don't do much Society anymore because my schedule, which has now opened up for now, so I might try to come back into Society, but I'm still entranced by some of the things that are going on in the storylines of some of the Society stuff.
Yes. One thing I do have to mention that you just kind of made me think about, there's a difference between planning and prep. You might look at this differently than me. To me, prep is the work you do to prepare for a game. Planning is looking at your group and basing your ideas off of what you think the characters are going to do in the campaign and writing a campaign around the characters and the story you want to tell. So while I do minimal prep, I do a lot of planning.
It's two sides to the same coin is how I look at it. You can't do one without a little bit of the other and vice versa.
Yeah.
I probably prep, well, because I actually like to have my whole adventure written, ideally, before I go and play. Because I actually do have 2 Starfinder missions published and up on Starfinder Infinite. Of course, part of the play is sort of like playtesting it, but this last one, I kind of broke that some because, I mean, I just had stat blocks in the beginning. I've yet to fill it out, but that's probably extreme end.
What about you, Preston? What's your prep or planning look like?
Well, to start with, it's usually reading the summary for the adventure I'm going to run first. Just kind of get a brief idea of what's going on. Second is a read through, just basically just get an idea of what's going on, how it flows, things along those lines. Then read for stat blocks, try to get an idea of what's going on. That's actually one of my biggest challenges because half the time you don't know what sub-tier you're prepping.
Yeah.
Okay, wait a minute. I said half the time. Nah, most of the time.
I think of all the games that I've prepped, I think I only had a small handful that I actually prepped the right tier, because most of the time it's like, okay, so everybody's gonna be low. Well, 3 people just showed up, and well, now they're playing out of tier, so now that's more calculations.
Yes, which is the reason why half the time you don't prep for a particular sub tier.
I do admit that second edition, as far as how they did that, changing everything with the tiers, I like it a little bit better than first edition Pathfinder.
A little bit. I do like the fact, of course, the well, now we're talking systems here. I do like the 3 action system. It is fantastic. It gives you more versatility in what you want to do. The character creation is even better.
Oh, far more streamlined.
Oh yes.
I like the streamline, but at the same time, I don't.
Well, I probably should have brought this up earlier, but anybody hear about the fact of 5e actually, or well, 5e, no, actually with the 2024 players guide, they're actually doing something apparently that was a house rule where characters get a first level feat, and they're calling it a origin feat.
I've been seeing some things on that, and I've heard people both like what's going to be coming, and people who are disliking some things.
Yeah, I'm hearing them take a page from Pathfinder on that one.
Thank you.
Yeah.
But no, prepping it's really also depends on basically if the adventure. I'll do more prep if the adventure involves NPCs that really need to be, shall we say, emphasized.
Yeah.
And
Like so.
Also, I got to say, there's a little bit of difference between where you're playing as to how you prep. A home
Agreed.
game, you kind of run fast and loose more often than not. At a game shop, that's where you were talking about. You don't know what tier you're playing or running, and you have to do a lot more prep.
Correct.
Running in a convention, you get the one advantage of you're told a month in advance what level you're running because you're running a slot for a specific level, especially on
Okay.
the multi-table specials. You might
Yeah,
be,
that has its own level of prep for in my case.
yeah. And the behind the scenes thing is what you really have to prep for because you have
Oh,
to
yeah.
get there in advance, get your table set up, have everything set up perfectly. You need all the maps, all the minis, everything.
You have
You
to
don't
have it
make
at literally arm's reach, ready to drop and go because those are timed.
yes.
Yep.
And they're paying for that slot to play, so they expect a quality adventure and a prepped GM. Whereas your weekly game at the game shop, they'll forgive you if you have an off week.
Every week was an off week for me. I still remember the first multi-table special I did. The only
Mhm.
reason I was part of it is because the person who was supposed to run one of the higher tiers called out. So we moved the person doing a lower tier to the high tier and threw me into the low tier because I was the only other person that person had confidence in as far as running to be able to do part of multi-table.
Oh, I don't think I've told anybody the story of how I got into my first multi-table special. I was going to Gen Con, and I had been a volunteer for WotC, but in 2012 or 2013, I forget the first year I ran, but I was a volunteer for the True Dungeon, and I decided to also volunteer to run games for Pathfinder Society, which I had just gotten into. And so I contacted somebody, and they asked me how much experience I had with big groups. And I told them about the group I had back in Tennessee that hit 26 players at one point. And their response is like, then I've got the perfect thing for you. And
Shake hands with danger.
Yes.
yeah, just a little bit. It was like, oh, you're going to be running an adventure called Race for the Rune Carved Key. It's a multi-table
Yes.
special. And I'm like, okay, what does that mean? Well, you'll be running the level, I think it was 4 to 5 or 4 to 6 for the table for this.
4 or
And I'm like,
5.
how what? Yeah, it might have been. But I asked, well, 4 or 5, what level does this go to? They're like 1 to 12. Oh. And when I came in there, it was an entire ballroom with 150 tables. Every table had a GM and 6 players, and it was
Yep.
all one game. After that, I was completely hooked on multi-table specials, completely hooked on Pathfinder Society, completely hooked on Pathfinder, because to go be in one room with 150 people all there to play one game. I have never, in my experience, been in anything that big. Wizards of the Coast and TSR never managed anything that big. And this up and coming Paizo blew the roof off the place. And it definitely makes your game mastering feel like it's gone to the next level.
At least I had some time to prep for my first multi-table.
Mm.
What was your first multi-table, Preston?
Funny you mentioned that. It was so far back, I don't even remember.
Been doing this so long, you can't even remember the first multi-table.
We're talking, let's see, 2012 was when I started running Society Play.
I like saying the fact that it's been, for me, working on 8-9 years now, and you were a few years ahead of me. So
What year was Race for the Rune Carved Key?
That was season 4. Gosh, that was 2012.
Okay. Yeah, because I think you and I started around the same time.
Yeah, that was Gen Con. That was Gen Con special for that year.
Yep.
Because my first PaizoCon was during season 4. So
you were probably running in Race as well.
actually, I did not. Trying to remember. I know the first multi-table I played in was gosh, what was I forgot the name of it now. Season 3, qualifier for the Haojin tournament.
Oh.
Is it bad? I don't remember if I ran a multi-table before I played in one or not.
Oh, I know. I knew I played in one first.
No, I don't even remember the one I ran. I remember the one that I played in. Our cleric got thrown into a corridor and got turned into mist.
Same scenario.
Oh,
That's what I'm trying to remember.
sounds about right.
Yep. No, I already know that was right. Trying to remember because I didn't play in a multi-table at PaizoCon. Oh, it was season 5. I am really bad about remembering these names.
Quick, just go into Google.
Well, yeah, could always do that.
Ask the Oracle of Knowledge.
Yes, the Oracle.
I have to say the multi-table specials really changed the way people thought about
Oh
game
my
mastering.
God, yes.
I will say
People
that
wanted
there
to do
are-
a living campaign, but that was the first time you had a full living adventure with all levels working together.
I will say though, I don't see any like just regular old GM or DM being able to do multi-tables. It like you said earlier, it ups your level as far as what kind of a GM or DM you are, but they're not easy, especially when you get up to the higher level ones and you're running higher level tables.
That's where I like to level things.
Yeah.
You can put newer GMs on the level 1, level 2 tables.
Yep.
And for them it's like running any other organized play game. But yeah, you GM a level 11, 12 table at Gen Con, you're going to have pros with very small numbers on their Pathfinder Society card.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I'm not talking about the people that earned the 3-digit numbers.
No, well, at the time I had a 5.
Yes, yes. And I do like the fact that I could brag about having the lowest number in the area.
Not
of anybody
anymore.
that I knew. Well, yeah. But yeah, I don't think I'm gonna be able to beat you now. It's just amazing that it's
Match 'em.
7 digits starting with a 3.
Yep.
That's 3 million players internationally in the Pathfinder Society.
Yep. That's where they're currently at. All right. I need to look at a different location because I am not finding what I'm looking for.
Level multi-table I did, I think was a 7 to 8 level. That was one of the ones, and it was something.
That was why it
With-
was challenging.
Yeah, that's that weird bracket of they can either be really broken or not yet. There's certain level groups that they'll go one of two ways. But I want to say it had something to do with the Ruby Phoenix or something, because I remember there being a Phoenix in it, and one of the higher tables ended up in the first round killing what was supposed to be the big bad for their level tier, and so the GM threw another one because they had killed it in the first round.
Yeah, even with organized play, sometimes you have to kind of step out of the box and keep things going because
Oh, yeah.
as a GM, you don't want to see your players just sit there and wait. And
Yeah.
with
Nope.
things like the multi-table special being a timed thing, if you kill something in the first round, you still have 20 minutes of time to deal with. And
That
that's
is the
actually
one
one of the
thing-
issues we have with me when I run games in the True Dungeon live action. But you run a room and that room lasts exactly 12 minutes, no matter what they do or don't do. If they kill the monster with the first attack, you find some way to keep them entertained and occupied for 12 minutes.
I think that's one thing I like with more homebrews than Society is you can go a little more off the cuff, because in Society you really can't change a lot. I think the one thing that I regularly changed because you could change it was weather.
Yep.
There was one of the ones that I rolled, and it was they were going up a mountain, heading into a valley, and just like, let's make it a thunderstorm. So they had to trek through the mountain in a thunderstorm, which was hilarious because one of the monsters came up, and there was a druid in the party with call lightning. So because it was outside, it was raining, he got the boost in most of his spells because he focused on more of like storm like spells. He was one of the druid archetypes that focused on electric and storm based spells. So he just completely shined in that game. He loved it.
I kind of think of it two ways. For your home game with your friends and the ongoing campaign, nothing beats homebrew. But there's also something to be said for organized play, and Pathfinder Society is the top of the litter
Yeah.
because you could be anywhere in the world, even the International Space Station, apparently.
Wait, what?
Yeah,
Yes.
I would love to see how they rolled that D20.
it's magnetic,
Hey,
and they roll
Whatever
it
works.
on a metal plate.
I'm sorry, they could stream that and get all sorts of views. I would watch that game.
oh,
Yeah.
you know, heartbeat.
All I'm imagining is people in the space station just kind of having a digital map and just floating in there playing Weeby Goblins.
Oh God.
Mhm.
Oh,
You like
that's,
Goblins
that'd
on
be so funny.
Space Center?
I don't know. I'm kind of thinking Starfinder might be the way to go.
Oh, that
I would
be
agree with that.
in Starfinder. Literally, play Starfinder in space.
On the other
I'd go for
hand,
that.
I'd be just psychotic enough to try to convince all my players to play Call of Cthulhu and pull something akin to Aliens or something, and then bid them good night when it's all over with.
Yeah.
Because I understand that place is pretty darn quiet.
Mm-hmm.
That could be entertaining too.
But is there anything you don't like about running?
Yes and no. So for me, most of the things I dislike with running come more from society and the fact that it is you have to be welcoming of everybody, including trouble players.
Good point.
We all know people like that. Players that basically ruin the game. You have to, count things out before you're either playing under them or with them. My issues I'm having with homebrew because I'm working on my party just hit level 4 because I kind of made a mistake. They were supposed to fight an enemy at level 4 and I accidentally threw that enemy at them at level 3. So to make amends, I made them level 4 because I told them they'd level up after they fought that enemy. It's not as when you play with the same group of people, you kind of learn your players, and so you know how they think, which I both dislike and like, because I can make loot more tailored towards them, so it's a little more immersive for them. But at the same time, I know what they're gonna do and how they're gonna go about it, so it doesn't add that what the fuck what'd you just say kind of
So-
thing, and you don't get like the stories like the samurai from the Order of Citrus or the motorboating dwarves, or the bird who ends up getting a god complex, or the person who literally intimidates you by literally flashing you because that's how old they are and spends an entire round rolling things back up because they're just that saggy. Like you don't get that kind of what in homebrew unless you have those kind of players. But at the same time, after so long, it's not as much of a wow of, okay, yeah, I kind of figured you'd do that kind of thing.
So it gets boring with the same group of players.
Yeah.
Yes and no. I mean, my original gaming group that I started with in 1981, I'm still friends with a few of them that I still keep contact with, and we still game. 2 of them refuse to play anything newer than first edition AD&D, but that's all cool. And we were able to play for so long because we were all good friends inside and outside the game. We did everything together. We were a little clique of guys that just kind of did everything together. And we all knew each other better than anybody. And all of the games were tailored toward our particular play style. Other game groups that I've been with since then, when you kind of learn more about them, you learn who the trouble players are and who's
Like
there to have fun.
Like the druid who decided to turn into a literal bull in the china shop and run away when he got caught.
Yeah, but that's another thing is, I guess the first thing to take into account as a GM is what you're going to do with trouble players, because that's my number one issue as a GM, is not being able to handle trouble players in manners that I want to. In society or organized play, I know how to use the rules to kind of keep them in check. In my home game, I usually make them feel unwelcome if they can't toe the line.
Yeah.
And I know some people are probably think, oh, you're just throwing people out and not allowing them to play. It's like, no, everybody's
Nope.
welcome to play. However, there are rules. And as the GM, you're the storyteller. You're a member of the team. You're a member of the party. You're also the referee, judge, jury, and executioner. If you're hosting in your own home as the host, that gives you even more. If you're doing organized play, the GM is the person responsible for the table. So more often than not, if there's a problem at a game shop with one of your players, they don't come to the player, they come to the GM.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes that's something you can handle. Sometimes you have to talk to the game shop owner and say, hey, yeah, this is out of my hands. You know, it's up to you. And you go by what they choose. On the other hand, if you have problems with another player or even a GM, if you can't work it out with the person, you go to the locale owner. If it's a private location, well, that's when you start looking into the possibility of playing somewhere else.
Or trying to
booting
talk
players.
with the GM or other players, yeah.
Well, like I said, if the private talk is one of the steps in it, but if that doesn't work, there's just some people that just aren't going to work together.
Yeah. I got one for y'all. Difference between GMing games that have experienced and veteran players versus newbie players. How do you guys go about it?
I'll let Preston go first on that one.
I just want to say, it's like, who's going to this one? I guess I will. So a lot of times, so basically, with organized play, you have to be prepared for stuff like that.
Agreed.
And one of the things I tell newer players is, don't ask your fellow players. If you have a question, ask me as a GM. Do not bother, because players will have their own characters, their own complexities, things like that. It's like, I'll get the questions like, what should I do? What do you want to do? Does this work? Can we do it within the rules? Sometimes you have to improvise. Hence the stories that Chaos mentioned earlier about the motorboating dwarves and then the
Order of the Citrus Samurai?
There we go. Yeah, I had to improvise.
Yeah, my Tennessee group had that thing. Like I said, at one point we hit the 26 players, and we had the youngest player we had was somebody's 6-year-old daughter that they couldn't pay for a babysitter that night. So we gave her a quickly rolled up character sheet for her mom's spider familiar and just kind of let her wing it with that. She had a hell of a time playing because she loved it. She was part of the thing. She got to play with her mom. She got to be a silly giggling spider. That didn't hurt the game any. On the other hand, I had people at the tables that had been playing as long as I had that had just immense backstories with their characters. And with them, you just kind of let them have the free reign to kind of run their character and be their character and just take notes of where that character's going, what they're doing, what they want to do. You write it down in your notes and you make sure to include stuff that ties into that. And then we had another player who was she was also very much into the mature adult thing. She had gotten a copy of the Book of Erotic Fantasy, one of the 3 adult only books, asking if she could play. Well, she happened to bring her character the same week we had the 6-year-old start. And she literally had a priestess that gained her spells by performing sexual acts.
Shake hands for danger.
Especially in a public setting.
No, this was at my mom's apartment. My mom was actually the host for our game. I was the one running.
26 people in
Yes.
your home?
Yes.
What did you live in, a barn?
No, it was a 2-bedroom apartment with the living room and the dining room were attached, and my table was 12 by 4, and then we also had another secondary table set up in the living room where some people were sitting at the couch, and then there were some people sitting at the bar in the kitchen, the pass through. So I was completely surrounded by just tons of people. It was a
I'm
blast.
looking around in our new apartment. I cannot imagine trying to run a game with 26 people in this area, and it's a fairly open floor plan.
Yeah.
Like, how?
Oh yeah. But to kind of get back to the adult, the mature player, I wanted to call the player herself mature, but her flavor was mature. I had to call her aside, her and her husband, who was reluctantly allowing her to play this nymphomaniac priestess. And I told them, I was like, there's a 6-year-old in there, and we've got a couple that are under 16 that are playing. So you knew this when you came here. And we were going to let it slide a little bit because the youngest player we had, I think, was like 15 at that point. I'm like, when anybody under, I told him I was going to institute a rule. Anytime there's anybody in the apartment under the age of 13, instead of describing the act you want to perform, your character's baking cookies. Everybody in the party knew what she meant by baking cookies, but the 6-year-old thought it was the most hilarious thing. And at one point, she did kind of panic her mom because the spider at one point wanted to bake cookies.
No.
Shake hands for danger.
Fortunately, I like to hope the child never learned. So yeah.
I've in the game I'm doing, my other half, Elfney, is she decided she was actually going to make the cleric, so she had me come up with we've talked about it before on the channel, the Waffle God.
Oh yes.
So she is a cleric of the Waffle God. And part of the tenets is to every morning she has to feed those who want it a good breakfast. The first time she rolled, she got a 24.
Dang.
At level 2. Pretty impressive.
Yeah.
And so I was describing just how good it smelled, and one of my players like, oh, do our clothes blow off like they do in Food Wars? And so, me being me and as mischievous as I am, yes, I need a fort save. So now every morning, the party has to make fort saves, all because the one player mentioned Food Wars and some of the scenes from that anime when people eat food. Somehow they lose clothing by eating food.
This is why I tell people, you give me an opening and I am going to exploit it.
Oh, they love it.
Yeah.
There's a running joke of the fact of apparently the monk of the party, which is the most experienced member of the group, is just so celibate, nothing will affect him because he's playing a monk that's going to be taking the vow of celibacy.
Oh gosh.
Because he has made every single saving throw so far.
Yeah.
However, the other 2 members of the party have failed periodically. But it's just one of those things of I if we had someone younger, I wouldn't have thrown that, but that's one of those things of, and everybody at the party loves it. They're waiting for the monk to fail. They're just waiting. And he's praying he never fails.
Yeah. Sometimes you just, like Preston says, when people give you an out, you got to take it.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah.
And in our same group, that group at one point they were all reaching 20th level. This was 3.5 D&D, so very powerful characters. And we had one character, Jed Sparrowhawk, elven fighter thief with an insane charisma that only got higher as he went up in levels. And the entire party decided to go to the arena, and none of the others wanted to actually fight in the arena, so they all bought tickets to see Jed fight in the arena. Everybody in the party started passing me notes. saying how they wanted to try to do stuff in the stands to put Jed over, and I had him do these hidden roles to affect his crowd working, and being high level, the number of critical successes was insane. And it finally came to him after winning the battle and totally humiliating his opponent. He does one final crowd working act, and I told him, I'm like, okay, you're going to have some bonuses because you now realize the entire rest of the party has been in the crowd working. And the place is kind of rumbling, chanting your name. Jed, 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 Jed. He's like, awesome. Okay, one last crowd working roll. And he grabs this one die that he considers to be cursed because it rolls like garbage all the time, except the one time he doesn't want it to roll high. And then it'll never fail. And in that case, same thing. Nat 20 on the crowd working. I'm like, okay, that was a crit. Back it. Second nat 20. I'm like, okay, with all the
2.5%
bonuses,
chance.
your critical success pretty much broke the DCs of epic level crowd working. He started a riot of people coming out of the stands to touch the legendary hero that is Jed Sparrowhawk. People were dying, being trampled as everybody was trying to get to him. The rest of the party, all they could do was escape because there was nothing they could do to stop the crowd. He beat a path out the door and it ends up with the entire group fleeing town and hiding because the entirety of this massive arena all wanted to find Jed Sparrowhawk and praise him as being the great warrior that he was.
Task failed successfully.
Well, no, Task succeeded in the worst possible way. He was trying to work the crowd, but he figured if he rolled the cursed dice, it wouldn't roll very high and he could ride on all the bonuses. But no, that double 20 crit backed by like 30, it was like plus 30 between everybody else.
Oh,
And
wow.
so it was 50 something plus his bonuses. I think it came out to like a 75 charisma check for crowd working. He actually had perform crowd working as a skill. And it was just so insane that it was the DC to take people from hostile to helpful.
And he
Oh,
just
wow.
blew it out of the water.
So those that weren't, and since they weren't hostile, basically everybody went to fanatic in the arena.
Blink of an eye.
Yeah. After that, the character bought a mithril mask and refused to go out in public without the mask because he had deemed that his charisma was too high and it was dangerous to the public.
Ooh.
And as a GM, I'm just letting them go with it and having fun and just adding it all up and getting everybody into the thing. Everybody is loving it and just having a great time until that last roll hit. And then it just turned on them 180 because they were at the top of the top and then it all came crashing down right there. And they did not realize that you could do too good at something. And most of them that I've talked to all remember the die, which they take to calling the crowd killer. It was this pumpkin orange D20, and that was its nickname because it was the crowd killer.
But as GMs, DMs, storytellers, whatever the game calls you, how much influence do you have over that gaming experience at your table?
I'd say that heavily depends on if it's homebrew or society.
I'm gonna have to correct you on that one, Chaos. There are times where I've actually had society games where I've not broken the rules, but bent them pretty extremely. And players have come up to me afterwards and said they had an amazing time.
I'd say there's merit to both. My thought is in society, there are still more rules you have to follow. There are things you still have to do. But all in all, as far as control over the game and their experience, for me, I always prefer more off the cuff things, more so than written. So for me, I'd say I have more control in more of a homebrew setting than a society, because you could have an entire party turn evil and manipulate them to where what they're end up doing is actually evil. Whereas in society, you know you're going to be with a bunch of goods or a bunch of neutrals. Y'all are the good guys. Y'all aren't the bad guys. So that's the way I see it, at least.
I kind of take the point of view that in a way it doesn't matter if it's organized play or free form. It's going to be down to the players for one. The between the players and the GM. If you have a bunch of players that either don't have respect for the GM or they're just free thinking and they just want to run and go, not meaning any harm, but they want to run, go, do their own thing. The GM's going to have a lot less control over it. And it's not always a bad thing. Because sometimes the GM, it's like, hey, you want to go and do your own thing? Stand back and let them, create their own problems. Also, the game itself could be a huge effect. We've all played Pathfinder and Starfinder, and the difference in flavor just between those very similar games. Some of us have played 5e and 3rd edition back in the day, even older versions of AD&D. And then when you get away from fantasy, you get into horror games like Call of Cthulhu or story-driven games like The World of Darkness. And it varies. For instance, 4e and 5e, very player-centric systems. I've had players argue with me about the rules and literally tell me that the DM doesn't have the power to change the rules or to overrule things. And
no, I don't like that.
on the other hand, some games like Paranoia and Cobalt's Ate My Baby, other comedy games, the GM has full control over everything, but yet the players have full freedom to do whatever they want because it's just a complete chaotic, insanity. The Toon game, you're playing cartoon characters in a cartoon. So there are no limits. The GM can't rein in the players. They just take what the players do and run with it. On the other hand, a game like Call of Cthulhu, very GM oriented. The players, I've had some people that didn't like playing horror games because they felt that their characters did not have enough control. And I've seen some people, I'm going to buy the biggest gun and the fastest car and this and this and this, and then find out that they do nothing for him in a game of Call of Cthulhu. And then they don't want to play because, well, how am I supposed to win? Well, in some games, you don't. And that's another thing is the term role-playing game is a misnomer. It's not a game. It's an interactive story with elements of randomness. You don't win or lose a role-playing game.
I agree with that. It's why I keep telling my players in my game, because the premise of my game is Test of the Starstone. I don't know why I'm so hooked on it. I like the idea of trying to become a god. So they have to get enough of a following and get strong enough so they can attempt to do the test and become a god. And I'm telling them, my job right now is to tell a story. Until you'll start the test, then my job is to kill y'all.
Yep.
Because it's not just going to be a walk in the park. No, my goal is to try and kill you when you start the test. At that point, I'm not holding back.
I gotta say, I have never made it my goal to kill a party in a game, any game. That's never been the goal.
Do that is slim.
Now, I do have games like Call of Cthulhu. I've had many TPKs in that. But the goal, again, just like any other game, D&D or something else, it's all about telling the story. With a horror game, you're telling a horror story, and not everybody survives. Sometimes nobody survives, but that's the story.
No, it's why when we went to do it, I asked my party, hey, what kind of story do y'all want? And I threw out some things. Y'all want to try to become gods? Y'all want to try to start, y'all's own pirate fleet? I threw out several ideas that, possibilities, and they were like, wait, we could try to become gods? Like, yeah. Because who doesn't want to try to be a god? So one of our players, he's playing as Kratos. And so in between going from basically where God of War 2018 to Ragnarok, he fell off of the tree and somehow ended up in the Pathfinder universe. So he's trying to find a way back. But in the process of falling, he lost all of his, godlike powers and gear. So now he's trying to, start fresh in this new world. I have the person who they literally want to become the avatar for the waffle god. The one player wants to be the god of hugs because he likes grappling.
That sounds
And
like
the
my Skittermander for the playtest.
Yep.
And the fourth player, I don't think she knows what she wants, but she's there with her friend who worships a god that just happens to be a waffle. She's there for moral support.
But
So far, it's fun. We've all been having fun with it. For that game, I would actually like y'all, as well as any of our listeners, if y'all have character ideas y'all want to make and throw at my party, send them in. Definitely send them in. The more the merrier. I would love to get other people's ideas and characters just as other adventurers, because
So what system are you running?
Pathfinder First Edition.
Ah.
It's the one I know the best. If you want them to be a rival team, you can roll your own stat block, or you can just make up numbers on the fly. I don't care. It's a no holds bar. Like, it's been known across the world that the gods have made it to where you can do it as a group to all try to become gods. So I'm having fun with it. They're having fun with it. I would love to get input from other players, other people. If you want to design a full party, go for it.
There's an old trio that I was part of that might be interesting to introduce to those people.
Right
if
now,
they could
my
ever
party is
find their
level
way off.
4.
Oh, well, yeah, this party would. These three guys would kind of be a little above their pay grade.
Well, they're level 4 right now. So if it's a group that they have to take on later on, great.
I'll have to show it to you because we had an all evil campaign that ended up kind of going belly up because one character was too insane, one character was too evil, and the third one was an annoying drow.
Well, they need more villains and rivals, so
Yeah.
the more the merrier.
But I think we're getting towards the end now.
Yeah.
One more question, though.
Okay.
Can the GM, DM, storyteller, whatever, make or break the experience?
Yes.
Definitely.
Absolutely.
There are some GMs that I have played under that I love playing under them. Preston, Leroy, both of them, love playing under them. I haven't really played under you not much, so I can't really say. But when I did, you had a lot to learn, but that's better than some. Where there are some, I just refuse to play under them.
Yeah.
Because they are such either rules lawyers or they're more lethal than I am. It would not surprise me if there are people that don't like playing under me because of how lethal my dice can be.
Some people just can't tell a story.
Yeah.
True.
I was told I do better at social scenarios than combat heavy.
Well, I have to say, there is only two people that come to mind in our kind of local gaming area that have both been Pathfinder Society GMs. I'm not going to give their names, but I think we all know who those two people are.
Yep.
One was a power gamer that takes it to GMing, and that should not happen. Another one of them is an old schooler that felt that, number one, he's been playing longer than anybody except me. He got upset when I told him that. But he figured I'm an old school gamer, so therefore I can kind of make up the rules as I go, and this is what I find interesting. And he was a cranky old fart.
Yeah, I had to scratch my head. Like, who are they talking about? Then those descriptions. Yep, I know who those are.
But on the other hand, the very first convention I ever went to was a small convention down in Boise, Idaho. This was in like 1995. It was second edition AD&D that they were playing. Fall of the Dragon was the name of the convention. And they had a lot of cool stuff going on there. But the one sour point to that whole thing was somebody was doing a homebrew game, with pre-gens, because back then, it was first and second edition, you could not make a character on the fly. You basically at a convention, you tended to play pre-gens unless you belonged to the RPGA, which was kind of a weak version of what the Pathfinder Society is today. But we had these crappy generic pre-gens that didn't even have names. You could tell they'd been reused. They weren't completed. The GM did minimal prep and was dry as a bone when he ran the game.
Oh God, that just sounds horrible.
The game ended with each one of us being teleported to the top of this giant pillar with
Credits
bottomless
rolling up?
pits on all sides, and literally the battlefield was top surface of the pillar, and that person had to fight a gnoll, a fuzzy dog-like gnoll. But I got bored. I was like, I've got this low-level character. I'm running a wizard with 3 spells that aren't even written on the character sheet. The guy's like, God, just pick some spells and go with it. And I just stood in the back for the whole time, just watching the battles and almost falling asleep at the table. But it got to this thing where I had to go by myself, and I'm like, to heck with it. The dwarf is badly injured. He can't take on a gnoll, so I'll just take on his and mine together. And everybody's thinking, yeah, this guy's just trying to get himself killed. And they kind of, oh man. And then the GM's like, are you sure? Like, yeah, sure. Let's go for it. And he lines up 2 gnolls against me. And I'm like, okay, are they upset? He's like, oh, they're pretty pissed off. I'm like, okay. I cast taunt on them. It's like, you cast taunt? Everybody's like, what are you doing? You're a wizard. You have 3 spells and you wasted one of them to piss them off. I shrug. And I'm like, yeah, I cast taunt. And they're like, well, they both failed their save versus spells, and they're charging at you. Like, okay, what are you going to do? I'm going to wait until they're just about to me, and then I'm going to cast grease and step to the side. And at that, the party stopped. Like, what? I'm like, yeah, I cast grease and step to the side.
As you're stepping aside, Grease comes, and it's a cartoon thing of they go see you, look at you as they keep going and off the cliff.
Yep. And at that point, the DM completely was flabbergasted at the fact that this wizard just used 2 non-damaging spells to outsmart his 2 gnolls and kill them because they fell off the bottomless pit. And everybody else just thought that was the most hilarious thing ever. At that point, the GM could not get control of the game again because everybody was just like, yeah, that's the high point of the game. There's no use in going any further, doing anything else. And they just basically just hammed it up, and the GM never got control of the game again.
Yeah.
And in that case, it was the GM. The players got bored, and we kind of took things into our own hands when we saw we had a chance to do something. And sometimes that comes out hilarious. Other times it's a mess. But yeah, that's as bad as cheating DMs. There's no reason for a DM to go out of their way to screw over players and cheat them. My opinion, GM is a member of the team, and just like any other member of the team, they can break the game.
Yep.
Okay, I think we've had enough of the Lord Greyhawk show.
Sorry.
Well, I hate to rehash a topic, but you were. I was trying to remember what, as far as multi-table specials.
Yeah.
My first one was Blood Under Absalom. That is my first one as a player. My first one as a GM was Siege of the Diamond City. That was season 5. And I've got to throw in the most epic multi-table was PaizoCon 2019, level 15 champion tier, where we took on a CR33 creature as the final boss.
Wow.
I remember the stories about that. I want to look at that stat block at some point.
That would be interesting.
That was an epic run.
Okay, but I think that's enough for this episode. So, once again, ChoasAssassin has invited y'all to submit characters for his campaign for the party to become literal deities. Of course, you can do that at gamersperience@gmail.com, all lowercase, spelled the same as the podcast. GamerSperience at gmail.com, as in Google's mail service. Or you can send us a direct message on X, formerly known as Twitter, at Gamersperience. Or if you're even on our Discord, you can just post it.
And we'll probably make a separate channel for characters ideas, so we can use them. Or if you guys have cool ideas that you don't get to run or play, you can say, hey, here's my idea, here's the build path, see does this work as well as I thought it would, kind of thing.
And of course, we'd like to thank Preston and Lord Greyhawk for coming on once again to be guests and provide their ample experience on this topic. And with that, I'm Not Much 23.
And I'm ChoasAssassin.
And this was Gamersperience. And as always, we invite you to go have your own Gamersperience.